You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, how's it going? I'm so glad to have you back here for this episode. This one was a lot of fun with my dude Dewey. He's a great guy, and this is a very interesting episode. But before we get into that, I want to update you on my situation. I know last week I was talking about fires and all this crazy stuff, so if you are not following on the socials at the Tone Mob on Instagram or Facebook or wherever else, I get it. Social media is a rough place to be right now, so no worries. But hey, if you feel like being on there, you might as well throw a follow my way. Anyway, I've been trying to do my best to keep people updated on the goings-on with the fires, and basically, it's been a roller coaster ride, and I won't bore you with the details because I'm going to send an email out to the email list hopefully this week detailing all of the crazy things that have been going on. It has been so insane, not just with the fires, but with work stuff, with me joining a new network at Sound Talent Media, all this stuff. And I want to keep everybody as up to date as possible, but it's just been a lot. And on top of it, I'm still doing my 30 videos in 30 days thing. Of course, because of the fires, I had to take a break there, and then the internet went out a day. So I'm not going to hit exactly what I was looking for, but I'm still putting out a ton of YouTube content right now. So if you want to give me a follow over at the Tone Mob on YouTube, you can see all that stuff. Anyway, if you want the big gory details, you can go to tonemob.com and hit the tab that says join the mob, and I will be sending out probably a couple newsletters because there's so much to go over, and I think it might be too much for one email. Anyway, fire stuff. So we're safe. Everything's good. We didn't end up having to evacuate, which is great. I'm still unloading stuff very slowly in amongst work things, and we're good. Fortunately, nobody in my family was impacted by this outside of a few family members having to actually leave, but they're okay, and we're back to a normal level. So there was, a bunch of stages. Basically, we went to level 2, which was pack your stuff and be ready to leave. And now we're back to 0, which is just normal life. Whatever normal life is in 2020. But anyhow, we're safe, and I thank you so much for all of those that sent me emails, DMs. I had messages coming from every corner of the globe in every platform, on every platform that I'm on, and that really meant a lot. We're safe. We were safe the whole time. We were just being cautious and trying to make sure that we stayed that way. So we're all good. And we have something that I'm organizing with a bunch of different gear companies to try to help out those that were impacted by these fires. So stay tuned for all that. It's going to involve gear going to somebody. So please stay tuned for all that stuff. Pay attention on the socials, emails, wherever it's best for you to stay in touch with me. That is where the information will be because I put everything out there as often as I can. So anyhow, this episode is with my dude, Dewey Halpaus. He has an awesome podcast called Peer Pleasure. We go over how we met and all that stuff prior to us both ending up on the same network. I won't go into the details because we talk about it right off the bat here. So if you're not subscribed to his podcast, it's really, really good. And yeah, let's get into this episode with Dewey. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar tone, sometimes, kind of, sort of. It's about whatever happens these days. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Dewey Halpaus from the Pure Pleasure Podcast, and formerly of Portugal the Man. And I don't know, you've done a lot of things that I just simply don't know about. So I'm excited to dig into this a little bit more and see what you're all about.
Excellent, buddy. Thanks for having me.
dude, should be a good time. Before we get started, I would like to tell people like our weird like meeting story because it's a little bit strange. So from my perspective, and you can tell me if I'm getting something somewhat incorrect here, but so my perspective on it is this: we started just kind of talking online after I joined the Jabberjaw network, and I'd been checking out your show. It was one of my favorite ones on the network at the time, and still is, even though we're on a different network now. But and then I went to interview Tepe from Thrice at the Roseland here in Portland, and you walked in, and we both kind of looked at each other for a minute. I was like, "You look familiar, but why do I know you?" Because at that point we had never met in person. And we talked for a minute, and all of a sudden it was like, "Oh, you're Dewey. You're Dewey." And then we had a fantastic evening hanging out with Ed and my friend Jess and yourself, just nerding out all evening. And it was a fantastic memory. And I've been listening to your podcast ever since. We've interviewed some of the same people, and it's always a good time to hear a different perspective. And I think you have a wonderful show. You also played in Portugal the Man, a band that I'm a fan of, and so we have so much to talk about. And that's the view from my angle. What about you? Did I miss anything?
So that's pretty close. It's pretty close. Like there was stuff before that. So like, we've been conversing online and going back and forth. And I was listening to, I think the first episode I heard of your podcast was the Yvette Young one. She's a buddy of mine, and I think there's a bunch of gear issues or something happened. You were like in the rain in the van, and I was just like, I was feeling for you because I've been in that situation so many times, and I thought it went really well. So it's like, man, this guy knows what he's doing. And so it was like I showed up at the show because anytime Thrice is in town, I'm there with them, and Ed and I had been trying to do an episode for like the last 3 tours, but we ended up just talking for hours. And I was like, why are we going to record this? Like, let's just hang out. And I was like, I saw everybody except for Tepe, and I saw the door was closed at the Roseland. I was like, where's Tepe? And he's like, oh, he's in there doing a podcast. And I was like, I wonder which podcast that is. Because it's weird when you're a podcaster, and especially in town, like you kind of, after a while, you start seeing each other at shows, and it's weird. So I was like, man, I wonder what podcast this is. And when we opened the door, I was like, oh, hey, Tepe, he's like, oh yeah, I was doing this podcast. I think it's called, and I saw you guys, but I didn't recognize you at all. And he's like, yeah, I think it's the Tone Mob podcast. I know that show. Wait a minute. Okay. And then that's exactly when we started like looking at each other like, wait a minute. And then the names came together, and it's like, okay, perfect. I know who you are. And then we ended up talking to Ed through all the opening bands, which I'm bummed about now because a couple of them are coming on the show, and I would have loved to have seen them live first from that tour. But yeah, it was awesome. We were just talking shop, and yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I was slightly bummed about not catching the opening bands because afterwards I went back and listened to Holy Fawn, and I was like, oh, these guys are so up my alley. Like with all the pedals and stuff, and their music is like, oh, this is all kinds of my business. I really wish I would have caught it live. But at the same time, that was one of my, Thrice is my favorite band. And so I was like, I'm not going to like not hang out with Ed as long as he wants to hang out with me. Like I'm, like I've been listening to these guys since I was a teenager, and all the listeners know I'm a huge fanboy. So I was like, I'm not gonna not hang out with him if he's gonna sit down and just chill with me. I'm gonna do that. So I did, but I would have liked to have caught them. I'd like to try to get them on the show as well. But their music is fantastic. Holy Fawn is just all kinds of my business. Great band. Go check them out, everybody.
Dude. Yeah, I can hook that up for you, I think, if you'd like to. But yeah, the one thing I'll say about Thrice, because they were my favorite band for a long time and a lot of years. And then, other things came into play, and I, started listening to other stuff. And they're still one of my top 5 bands, but I've been friends with them for so long. But it was so cool to see Ed just hang out and chat with everybody. Like they've always done that since the very beginning. I've had conversations like that have lasted 2 and 3 hours in their van outside the Crystal Ballroom back in like the early 2000s, to a tour bus on Warped Tour, or at the Expo Center when they're playing with the Honda Civic Tour or whatever. There's never been a time that hasn't happened.
At that show.
But that's the thing. They have no. There's no like barrier between that band and people that like them, people that want to be their friend. Like they'll talk to everybody, and everyone's included. There's no. I mean, yes, you eventually every once in a while have to go through a publicist or a manager to get to them, of course. But if you're in the room with them, you're family with them, and it's always been that way. And it was so awesome to see that still be a part of it. You know what I mean? That's the coolest thing about that band, is they're exactly the same. After all the success they've had, they're exactly the same.
And everybody I know that knows them on a closer level like that has said exactly the same thing, which is really cool to hear. And, you know, it's one of those things where people are like, don't meet your heroes. But in this case, like, meeting them just made me love them even more. Like, It was just better. So that was a real treat. But you've gotten to do a lot more, like, crazy things. I've gotten to do some really, really fun things as a result of doing my show. But you've done similar things way more often than I have. Let's maybe, before we get into all of that, let's talk about your backstory, you know, and then, you know, we'll talk guitars and gear at some point, I'm sure. But I want to know your story, because you've been in bands for a long time. You've been in the music scene for a long time. But I remember you telling me, like, it wasn't until you started podcasting that you actually got to, like, you know, go hear Ozzy warming up and things like that. And we'll get into that later. But like, tell me your whole story. How do we get here? Why are we talking today?
Well, I've always been into music since my dad got me into music when I was a kid, listening to, I used to go with him. He did a volunteer radio show once a week on the little island we grew up on in Alaska. And I was too young. I wanted to go with him, and he would let me, but I couldn't stay quiet when he was recording. He's like, all right, so when this red light comes on, you need to be quiet. And I could not handle it. That red light came on, and it was like my cue to start messing with stuff. And he does a show all in one big flow, right? So he'll do like his intro, and then the song comes in. When the song's on, he turns the recording off for the microphone, and we can talk to each other while the song's playing. But it's all done in one long chunk. And he doesn't edit it down or anything like that, because he can't at the time. Like, it was just, here you go, press record, boom. So he would have me sit in the record room while he was recording. So I would just play records. I mean, everything, like from the Wilson Phillips to Cheech and Chong to like just get exposed to things. And it really gave me a sense of like pop melody. There's a lot of pop music in there, a lot of classical music, not a lot of heavy music, of course. But so I didn't understand heavy music for a long time till my mid to late teens. So I got into punk rock through a buddy of mine that was in Anatomy of a Ghost with me, Joe Simon. And he brought over the first Green Day records and then the first Weezer record. Just, we met in detention randomly. And I had him over to the house to hang out. And he's like, do you play guitar? I was like, no. He's like, do you want to learn how to play guitar? And, we could do a band. And I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So he sold me this piece of crap K3 guitar for like $75. It was probably worth $20. And we started learning Green Day songs. And so that spawned from there into our first punk band, Nice Guy Eddie. And we started like booking our own shows all around Alaska where we lived, because there was one club called Gigs, and it was hard to get in there. And it was just kind of a weird spot, but it was a wonderful place. And anyway, so we would practice in the Little Caesars where we worked. We would store our gear above the walk-in freezer. We'd throw shows in the Little Caesars. We got the cops pulled guns on us when we were trying to load out for a show, thinking we were robbing the place. Like the stories go on for days. But anyways, we had to find our own way, which inspired us more, and we appreciated more what we had when it was over. Where we had gotten to by the time we had turned 18. We're like, let's move to the States so we can maybe get signed and tour. And this was still just that straight up punk band. And so we said, hey, bye to girlfriends, bye to parents. Hey, we're moving to Portland. And we moved to Portland, moved in with some friends that we could stay with while we got our feet wet. And then we kind of got into different music at that time, which kind of sent us towards like the screamo genre, which I hate saying that word. But anyway, we started a band called Anatomy of a Ghost. We changed the name, brought down Johnny Gorley from Alaska to join and do vocals. I was doing vocals before that. And he had a bunch of songs he had written and like this vision, and it worked. We got on mp3.com. We started promoting it on there. He stayed home while we went to work, and he would just be online with people on AIM all day, that AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh, yeah.
And he would be messaging people all day, like fans of the band from mp3.com, and just like starting these relationships and just like working it from the ground up. And it ended up working. Like we started getting like top of the charts stuff with these demos we had recorded in the basement. And eventually Craig from Rise Records got a hold of it and was interested in signing us. But at that point, he was ready to shut the label down. Like he had never recouped a record. He was super down on it, but he's like, you know what? I'll sign you guys. I'll put out a record for you. And he hooked us up with Chris Crummett, who I think at the time probably made like $1,000 to make the record. And Chris Crummett has now, skyrocketed in success, which is absolutely justified because he's fantastic. But we went to his old garage, recorded the record, put it out on Rise. Immediately it got bought by Fearless from Rise, and then Fearless wanted to sign us. Equal Vision wanted to sign us. We got money hungry because we were young and starving, and Fearless offered us like 4 times the amount of money as Equal Vision. So we signed with them. It was not anything against Fearless, but it was a horrible mistake because they didn't understand what we were trying to do beyond the screamo genre. So when the second record came around, we started like kind of changing the style, going more towards what Portugal the Man became. They hated the demos. That in turn really bummed everyone out. We decided to break up instead of going on hiatus. Then we ended up owing a bunch of money. So anyways,
Oh boy.
That's
Yeah.
Long story short, we owed a ton of money. Portugal stepped in when they started, and Fearless wanted to put out their record. They stepped in and took over our debt and worked that off so we could all be free and clear. So fast forward to a little while later, I started a band called The Burning Room because I was more into playing like aggressive, heavy music live. And Portugal the Man started doing their thing. And one day I got a call from Johnny, and he's like, hey, do you want to do some shows with us in Santa Cruz? We're playing with this band Dredge 2 nights, and they're sold out. And I was like, dude, I'd love to. So he's like, all right, learn the set, come over, practice. And it was just like old times. And then we drove to Santa Cruz. The shows went great. And then I ended up staying on for a few years. So we did like a bunch of full U.S. tours like Poison the Well, Fall of Troy. At that point, Portugal didn't have a lot of pull on who they went on tour with. We were opening a lot of those shows. And then we went to Europe, and they're huge in Europe. And so that was an eye-opening experience. And then I got an offer to join Poison the Well. And so I took that offer, but that was the night before leaving for Europe with Portugal the Man. So Portugal the Man replaced me for when we got back. I said, I will do the tour. And I did. And then Poison the Well got a tour and took off while I was gone, and ended up keeping that buddy on. So I got back with no job. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm done touring. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to start a family, kind of do the real life thing. And eventually, years later, I was like, hey, I want to, get back in touch with a lot of these people. And I miss the creative side of things. And I started hearing what podcasts were and heard a couple. And then I was like, I could do that. And so I talked to my wife about it. She's like, well, give it a shot. And so I did it. And here we are. So, and ironically, sitting in the Equal Vision office right now, the show is now signed to Equal Vision. So I eventually finally got to sign to Equal Vision 20 years later. Anyway, there's the story.
It's really interesting because I didn't have all of the musical experiences that you did, but I was very much a part of that scene as a, consumer, and catching every show that I could possibly catch when they came to town, and blah 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 blah. Total scene kid minus the look. I never did go for the look. I was a little bit too much of a redneck for that, but I was definitely like heavily invested in all of that. But I just knew early on that the touring life wasn't for me. I was like, it's romantic. It sounds like there's bright patches, but it also sounds not very fun. Largely.
Dude, it's a grind.
So,
It's a grind. You learn a lot about yourself, but it's also incredibly taxing on your body and your future and everything else.
yeah, right. So I kind of just knew that I wasn't ever going to do that, and still don't really have an urge to do that, although I'm so glad that so many people do, or, did pre-COVID, but hey, we'll get back eventually. But at the same time, I did feel a weird disconnect. Like, I just had regular jobs, they were good jobs, but I never really felt fulfilled creatively. I never really felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I was obsessed with gear. And so I was like, well, podcasts. I listened to a lot of podcasts. This was like 2015. And I was like, same as you. I was like, I think I could do that. That seems like a thing I could do, without really realizing how hard of a thing it really is to like get people to pay attention, especially when you're some mechanic.
Yeah.
No connections, no anything, nothing. Like, and so I just kind of started, and fortunately people took to it. It's been amazing. Thank you. If you're listening to this right now, thank you so much. I can't believe you're doing this still after all this time. So,
Isn't that the best? Like, you're like a mechanic. I'm a plumber. Like, that's the weirdest. Like, I think it was 10 years between touring and starting the podcast where I didn't go to any shows. I didn't do anything. So most of my contacts were pretty much gone or had blown up to the point where you couldn't get in touch with them if you wanted to. So I kind of started from scratch as well, but it's just that cool feeling. Like, you're at work. Like, I'm at work sitting around a lunch table with a bunch of plumbers that are just like, who are you talking to this week? No way. Like, they freak out. And it's like, you can kind of dip your toe in that life again if you want, and then you can go back out of it. Like, it's this cool kind of thing that's unregulated, and it's just like this, it's just special still. I don't know how much longer that'll last, but it still feels that way at this point.
Yeah, nobody I worked with knew I was doing it. So, because a lot of the early episodes I was recording on the job, so I didn't really want anybody to know. It wasn't a thing.
Nice.
It wasn't like I was doing anything wrong, because I've explained this on the show before. The type of job that one was like, you were either running around like an insane person, no time for lunch, no time for anything, no breaks, or you were just kind of waiting for the clock to tick over and the new shift to come on. And people, most of my coworkers were watching fail videos on YouTube or something. And I was just like, I'm going to sneak over here and go record a podcast real quick. So it wasn't like a bad thing. Everybody kind of knew that that's just the nature of the job. But yeah. I still didn't really want like everyone to know like what I was doing. It just felt kind of weird. But they know now. So Here we are. But they wouldn't have cared. They don't know who any of those bands are. The people that I'm interested in talking to, they don't know who any of that is. So it's fine either way.
Yeah.
Weirdly now, my boss's son works for Stringjoy, which is a company that I do a lot of work for down in Nashville and I'm heavily involved in. And my boss called me. He was like, do you know anybody in Nashville that's hiring? I was like, yeah, this guitar string company. And now my boss's son works there. So it's kind of a weird twist of fate. My former boss's son, anyway.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So guitar stuff. I know you're still playing guitar a little bit here and there just for fun, is what I gather.
Yeah.
What's your rig look like these days? Maybe we can go back into the history of the rigs as well.
Well, yeah, I started out with that K3 guitar made in the Philippines, I think. It looked like a Jackson, like one of the just generic kind of Ibanez looking guitars that everyone has now, like their own custom model, which is crazy. It's like the sharper sharper Stratocaster. Like if there's you know what I'm talking about. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. Every pawn shop has one right now, sitting on it right now. But it started with that, and Lee Jackson it was a crate. It was a 20-watt crate, just regular combo amp. That's what I started with, and yeah, from there we got Joe's girlfriend's mom to buy us this Lee Jackson I think that's what it was called. It was a half stack, just so we could hear ourselves over the drums, and had that forever until we moved to Portland. And I was using a Ibanez Tallman, like the silver sparkle Ibanez Tallman I got at a music store up in Wasilla. And I played that forever, and then got an Iceman.
Oh yeah.
And so the Iceman was cheap. Like it was like $200, which wasn't cheap at the time to me. But this ties back to Rise Records. So we played at the Paris Theater for a showcase for Craig Rise. And I was like, dude, I'm going to smash this guitar at the end of the set, and he's going to freak out. Like he's going to sign us. So we're playing the set, and I didn't play that guitar at all because it sounded awful. And I played it on the last song, and then I threw it into the back brick wall in the Paris Theater by the spot where you load in through that weird alley, and it shattered everywhere. And I was like, this is so badass. And then, of course, no one cared. I don't even think anyone saw me do it because I had to kind of go back towards the back of the stage. Super cheesy moment. But maybe it did work. I don't know. But from there, then I started really getting into gear with the Burning Room and Portugal the Man, because I was like, man, I discovered Craigslist and didn't have any kids, and I was working for cash under the table at this club I was living at, and I just spent every dollar I had on gear. So I was really into the Sun gear. I have a Sun Solaris right now. I have a Sun Solaris 60 watt tube head, 1964, I think. And Brian Sowers, who does tech work for what's his name, Isaac Brock from Sour Sound is his company. Yeah, I had him hot rod it and put a new power supply on it to bring the noise down, and that thing is amazing. I love that amp, and I got the story behind that too. Is I bought it from my buddy Aaron Edge, who had a bunch of Sun gear, and he got me into Sun gear. He's like, all right, I'll sell this, but if you sell it, you have to sell it back to me. And I was like, okay, cool. I totally didn't abide by that. I got on some hard times in between tours, and I was like, man, I'm going to get rid of this amp. I don't know why I did it. I just did it. Sold it at Trade Up Music, got like $400 for it or something like that, and went upon my way. Like I had other heads and stuff, and I had like a 5150 block letter, and I liked that. It had more crunch, and I didn't have to use a pedal to get distortion. And anyways, years pass. I'm done playing music. I'm on Craigslist. I see a Sun Solaris, and I look at it, and it has my handwriting on the back of it. It's my amp that I sold.
What?
That was selling for $500. And so I tell my wife, I was like, I know we don't really have the money for this, but this is like, send it free. If it comes back to you, it's meant to be thing. And so I told her, she's like, you have to get it. Like, call him up. Let's go get it. I was like, okay, absolutely. Call him up. He lives down by PCC Cascade or whatever. Drive down there. I look at it. It's my amp. And I buy it from him. He's like, wait a minute, you said you were in Anatomy of a Ghost. Yeah. Do you know Joe Simon? And I was like, yeah, he's a guitar player. Like, he's like, I work with him at RJ Sheet Metal. So there's like all these different connections of how like we knew each other to this amp, and how he got it through whatever. So now it's back in my basement right now, and I play it all the time. And I will never get rid of it again for that reason, because it came back once. It may not come back again.
That's amazing.
My rig is I have a Sun 610 cab, like the 70s era, with the Solaris, and I run that through that. And then I've got a Marshall 1960 slant cab, 412 Celestians, and a PB 6505 that I'm using as well. So I can blend like the super saturated crunch that those have if I'm playing something heavier, or if I want to just get big and loud, I use the Sun as well. So, and then I use I like the Earthquaker stuff I've really become fond of. So I have like the Afterneath and the, what's it called? It's basically a Model T in a box. It's the
the Aqua Gold?
Yes, I have that for the Sun, and that really, really heats that thing up. It's awesome. So that's kind of my rig now. I used to have a ton more pedals. I had 2 pedal boards, and I had 2 full stacks when I was playing with the Burning Room. So I had a Sun Beta Lee, or excuse me, I had the Sun Solaris. Then I had a Sun Coliseum lead, and then a Slave that I ran to 2 other cabs. And that was like, you could feel your pant legs blowing behind you. And you'd see people in the front row of shows like plugging their ears and headbanging because it was so loud. And yeah, that was a pain to tour with for sure. And especially in the earlier days. So when I started playing with Portugal the Man, I toned it down to just that Marshall cab and the Sun Solaris. And I used a T-Rex Mudhoney for my crunch on that. And then a bunch of delays and tremolos and things like that. That first Portugal record had a ton of those weird kind of modulation effects. And yeah, so we all had pretty cool pedal boards at that time. It's nothing like now if you go to Johnny's place and see how many guitars he has now and how many amps and how many pedals are just laying around. It's insane. And that's not even the storage unit and the warehouse and everything else. It's unreal. But yeah, so that's my rig now. It's pretty simplified. I've got two heads, 2 cabs, a couple pedals, and then I've got my Gibson 82 reissue, 62. I don't remember which reissue it is. SG that's been broken into 4 pieces twice and glued back together, and it plays like a dream and it stays in tune, and I keep it forever. And then I've got that custom one I had built from Thunderbolt Guitars, which is incredible. That Telecaster Deluxe, that's the aluminum neck. That thing is amazing. So that's been my rig the last couple years.
Yeah, he does those aluminum necks like not like everyone else does. He just kind of like uses a file and a grinder, and like at least that's what I was gathering from his Instagram. Is that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, he's got I don't know the tools necessarily required to do that, but there's something he has. Like a mill of some kind at work that he can use to cut out the basic shape, and then from there he files it by hand. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the tool, but he's trying to sell enough necks doing it this way that he can buy the proper tool to shape it at home and then in his shop, and then file it by hand, because that's the way he does it. And it gets, you can get that neck as thin as you want. It can do so many different things, and watching him work on it. And then when you hold it, you just feel all that work that went into that thing, like it's this really cool thing.
It looks really, 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 really cool. I want to check it out someday. I was really hoping we could do this in person and I could check it out, but COVID, so that's great.
Yeah. But I think it's 12 pounds.
Dude.
So it's heavy. But it stays, it's balanced. So if I let go, it's not like a Ricky where the head falls to the ground. It stays right where it was. And I love that about it.
12 pounds. That is hefty. That is very hefty.
And I asked for it to be heavy. I told him, you can make it as heavy as you need. Like, I don't have any problem with that because I'm enormous. So the Les Paul weight and stuff never bothered me. I never really played them, but I always appreciated the way it felt good. Like the guitar was where it was supposed to be.
I've never really had a problem with the heavy guitars either. None of mine are like terribly heavy. My custom's somewhere around, it's like 9.8 pounds or something like that, which isn't light, but it's not terribly heavy. But some people pick it up and they're like, it's a boat anchor, I can't do anything with this. And I'm just like, I don't know.
You sure
feels
can.
All right. It feels all right to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so let's talk about your crazy experiences podcasting. You've had more than a few crazy experiences podcasting, but
yeah, there's been a couple.
Tell me the Aussie story again. I can't remember exactly how that went.
Okay, so this is the other thing with podcasting. Like, I've met so many more crazy meeting stories, people on different levels of music than I ever met really playing music. It took me doing the podcast to get in these situations, which is still weird to me. But the Aussie story is, so Mike Mowry, who was running Jabberjaw, is one of my best friends, and he hit me up one day And we have a mutual friend in Blasco, Rob Blasco from White. He was in not White Zombie. He played for Rob Zombie. Like, I used to have him on posters on my wall from Guitar World magazine, and with him and Riggs from Rob Zombie's band. And then he played with Danzig. He played with Cryptic Slaughter, and now he's the bass player for Ozzy. So Blasco got into podcasting, and I was helping him and Mike make that Managemental podcast, and like giving him pointers on it. I named the podcast, like got the music together for it, things like that. So Blasco and I kind of got to know each other through that. And so Mike was still managing Refused at the time, and we were just texting. We text every day. And he's like, dude, you should come to Mexico City with me. Refused is playing this festival, Heaven and Hell Fest, and or Hell and Heaven Fest, I think is what it's called. I was like, dude, that'd be sweet. And then the next text was a plane ticket. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, is this real? He's like, yep, I'll see you there. And I was like, that's my birthday weekend. He's like, I know, happy birthday. And I was like, my passport's expired, Mike. And this was on a Tuesday. The show was that weekend. And he's like, I don't know, it's all paid for, hotel, everything, just make it work. So I brought it to my wife. I was like, this is weird. I think I need to go to Mexico City this weekend. It's paid for, but my passport's expired. She's like, can you get it expedited? I was like, I think so. It turned out to be over $700. But I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this. So I did it. I paid the money, got it expedited. The date Refused played was with Mastodon and Deep Purple and who else? Whole bunch of bands. Anyways, FedEx lost my overnight passport in a snowstorm in Nashville, where their hub is or whatever. So I get a call saying, hey, it's not going to be delivered. And I was like, well, I have a flight at 10 a.m. to Mexico City. And they're like, yeah, we're really sorry. You may have to do it the next day or cancel it. It's like, this is awful. I just paid all this money. Anyways, they found the passport, got it to me in time that I could change my flight. And I got there to Mexico City, I think about 10 o'clock at night on the first night of the festival. So I get, festival transport. I get picked up in a vehicle in Mexico City. It's the weirdest thing to still get picked up in a vehicle and taken to the festival straight there with all my luggage. I go to Refused dressing room. They played like 6 hours earlier. They were already back at the hotel. Put my stuff in their dressing room. Go meet up with Mike, and we do our thing. We have fun. We go out till whenever. Get up and go have breakfast with Blasco. And so since Blasco plays bass for Ozzy, he has the Ozzy pass, which is like the God pass of the festival. Ozzy has his own security, his own plane. He has his own his own area. So like, put it this way, Megadeth, Judas Priest, bands like that are sharing green rooms in this area, and Ozzy has his own compound.
Whoa.
So
wow.
Apparently, Sharon flew with him, which she doesn't usually do. They were going on a South American tour immediately from Mexico City. She forgot her passport. So they get there on the Ozzy jet. They won't let Sharon off because she doesn't have a passport. Apparently, when you're that size, your tour manager, you have two passports. Tour manager has one and you have one. She doesn't usually travel with them, so the tour manager didn't have one, and she left hers on the nightstand. So they won't let her off the plane. She's like, I'm just going to go home, which at that point, I guess Ozzy was about ready to just cancel it because he was so bummed out. And we're like, there's like 20,000 people here. Like, it's that like dicey. Anyway, she flies private back to LA. He stays and does the show. So Mike and I have one Ozzy pass. That's all Blasco could get. So we're sharing it. So if we wanted to go back to that area, one of us would take the pass and the other one would hang out in the regular backstage with all the other legends. And anyway, so I get back there. I'm going to go find Blasco before they go on stage. And I get back there and there's no one back there. Like, you see where Ozzy got driven in these white SUVs. You know he's in there. You walk back in like this little area where all the walls are like, 8 feet, but there's no ceiling. So you could like toss things over the wall. Like, it's like a changing room, right? Like, it's like a Ross Dress for Less changing room. And you see there's a bench right behind one of the walls. and none of the security is hanging out really, and there's no press back there, nobody. And I sit down and I'm like waiting for Blasco. I know him and Zach Wild are warming up, in the jam room. And all of a sudden I hear someone like wrestling with something behind the wall. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then like a phone or something. And then all of a sudden I just hear scales, but it's fucking Ozzy doing the scales like behind a paper thin wall. Like I could probably like elbow through it. And I just sat there in Mexico City on a whim, like, here you go, fly with me down here, to then sitting on a bench listening to Ozzy warm up, and he sounds fantastic. And hearing just his voice basically in a room with you is like goosebump inducing. Like I was just sitting there, I can't believe I'm here. And this was on my birthday. So like I'm in a hallway by myself listening to Ozzy warm up directly behind me, something that people may never hear, maybe even people that travel with him. It was insane. And I was just like, I'm going to take every second of this moment in. And then, so that blew my mind. Like this is insane. And then right after that, they come in, like clear out the place because Ozzy's going to be going for the stage. I get down in the pit, like the press pit in front of all these 20,000 people. And who's next to me is my buddy, Dennis from Refused, singer for Refused, who I met through the podcast. And we put our arms around each other and we start singing Bark at the Moon in front of Ozzy, like beyond front row in Mexico City on my birthday. And it was like the most surreal thing I've ever experienced. And like Dennis and I are just like having a blast. And then I ended up getting up. I went to basically Mexico City security is like people and their friends, right? So I made it through 7 different security guards with just a wristband on, got onto stage, and was standing right behind Blasco. And it's just me and Barbara Ann, Zach's wife, and that's it. And I look at her, she looks at me, and then she looks at Zach, and then I'm looking at Blasco. And then their stage manager looks over and he's like, oh, comes over to me, he's like, you can't be up here. And I was like, dude, like, this pass is from Blasco. I'm with Blasco. He's like, doesn't matter. There's no one allowed up here. This is like Zach's wife. You got to go. I'm really sorry. I was like, cool, man. I got 2 songs up there before he caught me. And then I get back down. And of course, they get whisked off stage and straight to the plane because they don't want the cartel to kidnap anybody from his party.
Right.
And so I had to say bye to Blasco before they even played. But anyway, so on my birthday, Ozzy's warming up right there. And then me and Dennis singing along at the top of our lungs in front of all these people, Bark at the Moon as the sun's going down. It was surreal. Anyway, so yeah, that's the Ozzy story.
I don't know if that can be topped. I think that's it. That's the top. That's the top of this the podcast
solid
story heap.
It's pretty solid. Yeah,
that's amazing. That's so cool. But
yeah,
it's weird though that because you said the same thing. You're like I've gotten to experience all this stuff from podcasting, but not from music, which is it is music. It's music based podcasting, but it's what a weird world we live in now. It's so strange.
And we're not journalists. Like I'm not a journalist. I don't have any aspiration to be a journalist or press. Like I don't want to go talk about your new record, and I don't want to go, ask you how the tour's going. And it's so hard to make people either believe that or understand that. So you just want to show up and talk? Yes. Well, okay, you can have 15 minutes with them. I don't want to do that. Like right. I've turned down Mark Morton from Lamb of God because they were only giving me 15 minutes. I said, I'm not going to waste any of our time. I turned down Ace Frehley because I'm not going to get anything in 20 minutes. Like I need longer than that. And I said, I'm not going to roll you over the coals for it, but I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm just going to bow out because I can't do anything with that. And it's such a weird thing. They're like, well, thank you for being respectful of our time. I was like, no problem. And when he has more time, give me a call. And then they start to kind of understand a little bit like, wow, okay. It's not just trying to get him on the phone and then hold him there for, an hour with a 20-minute schedule. And because no one's in the right mindset with that either. It's just a tangent. But I don't feel like we are press. like in the typical sense. We're just kind of capturing the human experience, through a focused lens.
That's why I had to change the description on this podcast, because for years I had the wrong description. Like, I had the same one that I wrote when I started, and it made it sound like we're going to only talk about the intricacies of gear. And sometimes we do. Sometimes that is what happens. But more often than not, it turns into this, which is what I prefer anyway. I love gear. I love talking about gear and nerding out on things. But more than anything, I'm interested in the people and what they think about, what they're going through right now. Like, I think about podcasting as it's this wonderful thing. And I was trying to explain this to somebody the other day who, they were not a Rogan fan, we'll just put it that way. And I get it. Like, I understand he's not for everybody. But I thought, isn't it cool, though, that you can sit down and be a fly on the wall for a 3-hour conversation with Mike Tyson? That's cool.
Yeah. Or listen to James Hetfield talk about bees.
Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like, I mean, that's what podcasting is so great, or why I think it's so great, is for that. You could never do that ever in any time in history. You couldn't sit down and listen to these people that are, they're not any better than you. They're not like any cooler or different, but they have such a unique life experience, and hearing about it is so fascinating. That's what makes podcasting wonderful. I couldn't do a 15-minute episode. I've done one short episode, and it was good, but it was like, it was short because of me, and I hadn't really established what I'd wanted to do at that point. It was also part of a bunch of short episodes, so it's a little bit different, but I don't know. I like long episodes. I like 3-hour podcasts. I don't do them here because I think the hour is a nice blend of being respectful of the guest's time, and you get enough of the meat and potatoes of the conversation. So I think that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I just let it roll. Just whenever we're done, we're done. Like but for, a lot of times you can get what you need in that hour. Like, if I can get 45 minutes, I can make something happen, but it's, the person has to start trusting you to talk, and, and if they don't come out the gate that way, which a lot of people don't, and then you have to establish that rapport and that interest and let them know you're interested through, the conversation itself. You can't just say, hey man, I really want to hear about this. You gotta work for it. And you need a little bit of time to do that. And anyone who goes into a 20-minute interview is not in any mindset to have a conversation. They're just there to get the talking points in.
Exactly. That's why the Patreon episodes end up sometimes being better than the main episode, which is a little bit unfortunate, I guess, for everyone who isn't a patron, but it works great for the patrons. So, because by that time you're really warmed up. You really know how the other one is. You have an idea of how they're going to respond, and the inflection they're going to give, and how you should, kind of bat it back to their court. It's really this conversation isn't really a whole lot different than one I would just have with a friend on the back porch, but you are thinking about it a little more closely. It's a very cool thing. And I think it gives you and I an opportunity to share in so many people's different perspectives. Like, I am a different person because of this show, and I think that's for the better. Like, I understand people's points of view so much better than I used to. It's because I really practiced listening. I didn't do that before.
Exactly. That's the point. That's the whole thing, is listening. You're a host. You're talking. You got all these rad microphones and this awesome setup, but you're talking the least. Like, you're listening more. You should really spend more on the headphones, I think, as a host, because you're really listening and absorbing, what they're saying.
Yeah, and if you don't, you can't really respond very well. And then the show gets all clunky and blah, 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 blah. You know all the problems. You've heard them before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So without getting into like the details of the deal and all this stuff, and you can tell me to pound sand if you don't want to talk about it, but you are the first podcast I've ever heard of that has been signed to a record label. Maybe there are others and I'm just not aware, but that's news to me.
There's not, man. It's something. So like I was saying in the original story of passing on Equavision back in the early 2000s, one thing you see from there is you see who's genuine and who's not, right? Like you see, so when Equavision came to us, I think so I can talk numbers, it doesn't matter. So Fearless offered us 75 grand and a van, brand new, non-recoupable, to sign with them for 2 records. And Equavision offered us 15,000 and an Atticus van at the time that they would let us borrow to tour. So they knew back then that we're a young band. We had some fire under us and some buzz. I hate that word, but we had some buzz about us, and they knew what we needed. We needed a little bit of money for gear, a decent budget for a record at the time, which would have been $5-7 grand, and then a van to tour, the means to tour. But they knew also we didn't need close to $100,000 in debt, and we didn't need all this stuff. Like what we needed was enough to get by and be better off for it. We were young, and we said, well, we're going to go with Fearless because they're offering us all this cash. So after that, the Fearless guys came to 1 or 2 shows. Dan was at every show. Dan from Equavision was at every show he could get to physically, even though we didn't sign with him, because he believed in us, he liked us, and was a genuine fan of the band. And I saw that, and I immediately knew, this guy, we should have signed with Equavision, because this guy is family, right? Like if he likes something, he likes something. It's not, hey, I want to make a bunch of money off this. I want to support this. And he came to every show. And it was anything we could do to get Fearless people to come out. And this isn't anything against them. They were busy, and I mean, they run things a different way. But Equavision has always been this family label, not holding on to people that want to leave for some reason, paying people on time, letting people explore what they want to explore. Anyway, I've always admired that. I used to go to the record store and try to find the records with Equavision, that Krishna logo on the back, because I knew it would be good. And I love just the aesthetic of this simple little logo on the back of a record. Just was something about it aesthetically was awesome to me. And I was like, man, someday I will have something on Equavision. And I got to work with them with Portugal the Man, because they were on Equavision when I was with them. But they took the chance and started putting out more Portugal stuff, and again, supporting us in whatever we did. So when I started the show, Dan had hit me up. He listened to some of the podcast. I can't remember who it was with. Someone from Equavision. And he checked out the podcast, and I hit him up. I was like, dude, come on the podcast. And he wouldn't do it, because he just doesn't do interviews. It's just not who he is, right? And finally, when he came around to thinking hey, maybe people want to hear what I have to say, he hit me I want to do it with you. And I was like, dude, that's huge to me. That's amazing. Absolutely. So he came to town. We went to the hotel and did a really great interview. I was like, just be calm. Just let me drive. We'll get through this, because he was kind of nervous about it, and he didn't want to sound. Of course, you don't do a lot of interviews. You're totally nervous when you do your first one, and it just felt I didn't have to drive at all. We just sat in the hotel and talked, and the episode came out really well. And I was telling him there's all these podcasts out there. I need something like a title sponsor, Turned Out a Punk, right? Presented by Vans. Vans basically told Damien, stop paying for what you're doing. Just do what you do. Have who you want on, but don't pay for anything anymore. And so Dan's like, what if we did that for you? And I was like, what? He's like, what if we signed the show as a band and worked it as a band? With COVID going on right now, no one's touring. This is our avenue to really try something new. And I was like, dude, I don't think that's ever been done before. And it hasn't. And people are still confused by it. But what we've done is we have assembled a team of people that work around music to push a podcast that is mainly about music. So we have the social media team. We've got the art department with Alan Ashcraft, who took the vision Dan and I had and turned it into a reality, right, of the rebrand. I send it to Alan. It comes back the next day, done, ready to post. We have a social media person that comes in and posts all the stuff. on time, and we strategize. We have meetings every week to discuss what we're going to do, what episodes we're going to put out that I've already got in the can. And we have a family team behind the show, which makes more sense than anything. And I'm surprised it's never happened before, because they also don't care. Oh, this week's guest is on Fearless. This week's guest is on Warner. Who cares? They don't care. They're promoting what I'm doing because they believe in it. And that, to me, is huge. And that's kind of what started this whole thing. And so I was prepared to tell Mike that, hey, I'm going to leave Jabberjaw and go with EVR. And that's when he said, hold on, let's see what Sound Talent is doing. So we made a deal that works with both parties to use Sound Talent as the pipes, basically, and Equal Vision as the machine. And so now we have people from both sides working for the show, which is absolutely phenomenal. I think I send at least 3 or 4 thank you emails or texts every day to the team for, like, man, you busted your ass on this. Thank you. I appreciate so much of what's going on. I think labels sometimes are weird about that stuff, because a lot of times artists can be really abrasive and like blaming them for something not working out or getting chewed out on the phone. But just seeing how much work people are putting into this thing that I started just talking into a microphone 4 years ago makes me want to tear up. Like, it's crazy. So everything just happens as it should, just like you would with a band. And it makes complete sense. From the outside, it's like, that's interesting. But when you're in it, it flows. And it's something where Dan has taught me patience and whittling things down in a small way, like breaking things up over a couple weeks instead of slamming it all. And everything just happens nicely. And it's so cool. So that's kind of the gist of the deal is they cover my costs and some gear stuff, but then we work together on advertising, work together on all the monetization, but growing the show is most important, and that's what we've been focused on, and it's working. Like when Chino came out, it blew through the roof. Like, it was like, what the hell? Like numbers we'd never seen before. And I was like, there's no way this is just because it's Chino. No offense to Chino, but I've had guests bigger than Chino, and they did just as much as everyone else. But I think the partnership and the rebrand and everything really hit at the same time that it got some fire.
Yeah, I think that's what some people don't really, understand about podcasting specifically. It's like, yes, having a heavy hitter guest that has a lot of, name recognition it's never a bad thing. But what I thought early on was like getting those type of people would be a game changer. And it's not.
It's not at all.
It's not even kind of. It's just like, okay, that episode saw a little spike, and we got to keep on keeping on. It's the consistency. It's keep coming back, keep providing quality stuff for the people who really enjoy it. That's what drives the thing. It's not getting, the ghost of Elvis Presley on the show. That's not going to matter that much. Or maybe the ghost of Elvis Presley would matter. Maybe.
Well, he doesn't have an Instagram, so he wouldn't post it either. So all you're going to get it to is your people anyway.
That's true.
You have to get people, and this is where it ties together, is you have to get people on board with you, and then everything else will fall in place. And that's what happened with Equal Vision, where they said, we like what you do. Like, the way I do it is why they like it. They want to hear me talk to so-and-so, which is not to toot my own horn, but they like the way that I do it, and that's why they got on board. So also, Chino hit me up on Instagram as a fan of the show and asked to come on. I did not reach out to him. So the fact that conversation was a real conversation between two fans, right? I'm a fan of his since the day one, the first record. He's been a fan of mine for several years, listening to the show every week. But the way that came together was because he liked the way that I talked to people, that he felt comfortable, that he wasn't going to get lambasted and ask the same questions and put out there for all the media to pull sound clips from. He just wanted to talk to somebody, and I'm in town, and he listened to the show. So when you sell people on you, they'll come back for whoever you're going to have on the show. That's why Joe Rogan can have and I'm not comparing myself to Joe Rogan. He's far beyond anything any of us are doing. But he can have a college professor talk about something that necessarily may not be of interest to an MMA fan, and then he can have MMA fans listen to that episode because it's Joe talking to them. They become like the conduit, like Matt Pinfield would for bands he necessarily didn't like. He saw it as being a conduit between the band and the fan. And that's kind of what it becomes is you sell them on yourself and they'll listen to whoever you have on. If you have, say Ozzy came on the show, he's not going to put it on his Instagram. He's not going to put it anywhere. You're only going to get the Ozzy stuff to the people that you already have. And, like Shavo from System of a Down was on today. He actually shared it to his personal Instagram, which was, I think, 238,000 followers. Chino didn't post it. I didn't want him to. Deftones didn't post it. Didn't need to. Like, it came out the way it came out. And that's something I picked up over these 4 years of what it actually boils down to is you have to do the job yourself and sell people on that.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it helps when people share, obviously. That's very important. It was actually very important for me even gaining any traction early on is that these pedal companies would actually share the show because they need the traction too. They need another piece of content for their audiences to listen to. And so that was really crucial for me, especially early on. But as it's progressed, it has been more just about giving the good stuff to the people that tune in for what you are delivering. And that's what I try to do. I try my hardest to make sure that it's the good stuff. That's why, I got ads at the beginning, I got ads at the end, and the rest of the show is the show. I get it. Ads are annoying, but we got to eat. So
sure, but you make them fun. Like, you make them fun. It's you doing the ad. It's not, listen to Starbucks or go get Starbucks or whatever. It's you. You're doing the ad. People listen to the show because of you, so they'll listen to the ad. I bet you more people listen to the ads that you do than would have skipped it if it was someone else. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's Blake talking. Like, they'll listen to it. At least I listen to the ads when I listen to your show because it's you. Like, it's part of the show. I may be interested in the product, I may not, but it's just like you're talking to me. That's where you've got it.
And if it's my voice saying it, first of all, I don't do automated pre-roll stuff. I do automated post-roll stuff because, I don't know, at that point I figure people have gotten everything out of the episode they're going to get. And if American Airlines wants to tell them about something, they can turn it off if they want to. It's not interrupting the show. You know what I mean? And it'll put 0.0002 cents in my pocket. So whatever, but I'm not going to do that at the beginning. If you hear my voice talking about something, that's because I have some knowledge about it and care about it. I'm not ever going to promote something that I think is garbage. I might promote something that seems unrelated, but it's not going to be garbage. That's really important to me.
Yeah, no, I believe it, dude. I hear it when I listen to your show. Like, I listen to the ads, because it's you saying it. So I want to hear what you have to say about it. Right. Like, I don't, even if I don't care about what the product is or even know what the product is, a lot of times I'll go check it out anyways, or I'll go to the YouTube and watch the YouTube demo or whatever. You do something like that. Like, that's where you're getting people, right? Like, it's good stuff.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's fun, and it's fun trying to do it the right way. That's always the goal, right? Just do it the right way. Well, we have eclipsed that hour mark, and I still got a couple questions to ask you.
Okay.
So, first of all, this is your chance to put up a billboard, say whatever you want to say. If you got a message you've been trying to get out to people, especially maybe some new folks who don't know about you, or just anything you want to say, here's your opportunity to do it.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to do that. And like we talked about a minute ago, like, I've had this incredible opportunity to sign with Equavision Records and Sound Talent Media, which you were on as well. And I'm just incredibly humbled by the amount of power and work and sweat that has gone into helping this show grow from something that I'm just doing with a microphone to something much bigger. And so, thank you to that team on Equal Vision, and thank you to the Sound Talent Media team as well. It's just been an amazing thing. But the one thing I want to say to people that haven't heard my show, and I say it on the show all the time to guests, is if you want to know what somebody does, you can go to Spotify, you can go to the record store, pick it up, listen to it. That's fine. If you want to know who someone is, listen to my show. Because we try, basically the whole idea behind the show is to take someone of, even a meager stature in the entertainment business to a platinum selling star and break them down into real world, real person deal where we're talking about, regular things that puts them on a level where people could understand them and see a different side of them. So that's kind of the gist of it. So the show's on Equal Vision Records and Sound Talent Media. Comes out every Tuesday. Well, I post it at 9:00 Pacific on Mondays. So at midnight on East Coast it comes out. And we've got a bunch of big stuff coming up, and should continue to go that way. I think we're booked out through October. So it's just been an awesome ride. So and meeting you through it, and your show, and all the stuff we've talked about, and tips and tricks and all that stuff has been awesome too. So thanks to you as well.
Right on, man. That was beautiful. All right, here's the first classic question. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Oh, favorite Boss pedal would be the DD5. The DD5 delay pedal is, you could always find, so if you ran into hard times, you could sell it for $100. If you needed one, you could find it for $100. And it's got a external tap tempo input on it that the other ones didn't seem to have. This, like the DD6 and the DD7, there was all this weird stuff. Like the DD3 was awesome, but the DD5 had all that stuff and the external tap tempo, which I could really have fun with, especially if we were playing the song fast, playing the song slow, wanted to do some like fluttery kind of stuff. And it always sounded great, and it was simple to use. And as far as Boss pedals go, like that would be my favorite, hands down, right out the gate.
DD5. Good choice on the DD5. I really need to explore. I've played a DD3 quite a bit, but I need to explore more of the DDs so I can get a feel for which one is my pick, because I don't really know.
Yeah.
But I love Boss.
Start with the 5, man. Start with the 5. Get one of those little, I forget what they're called. They're little cheap, like keyboard expression pedals, and you can use that as a tap tempo. And it's awesome. You have fun.
Good stuff.
And you can do it. You can do the tap tempo with the pedal off. That was the other thing that sold me on it. Is you didn't have to have it on to start working the tap.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't even think about that.
That was the main selling point with the tap tempo. Was I can do this before I engage the pedal.
Right. You can listen to what your drummer's doing, get it in gear, and then take off. That's beautiful. Good to know.
Yeah, there's always a DD5 on my board, regardless of how many delay pedals I have.
All right, this next question I'm really excited to hear your opinion on, because you're local and I can explore and we can discuss this further in depth. But what is your favorite kind of pizza?
Man, I'll tell you right now, my favorite kind of pizza it used to be right up the road from here. It was Rocco's Pizza on Burnside, and it was the Canadian bacon and pineapple. I loved that pizza. I used to live at this club called Loveland on the east side, and I would walk downtown every day just for something to do between shows. And I would buy 2 slices of that massive pizza and eat one and bring back the other and throw it in the fridge for later. And that was one of the first places I landed in Portland for pizza was Rocco's. Easily the Canadian bacon and pineapple at Rocco's, which no longer exists. So now I'm pretty into, my buddy Bryce Hooper has a place called Secret Pizza Society. And it's a vegan pizza place, but it's pretty tasty. I got some for my wife for her dinner the other night, and it's pretty good. So that's a good spot. But Sizzle Pie, of course, is a classic in Portland as well. You can get whatever you want, but I like the Don Caballero.
Sizzle Pie is a classic. Have you ever been to, I think it's closed right now, but have you ever been to Checkerboard Pizza?
I have not. I've never even heard of it.
Checkerboard is a offshoot of Ken's Artisan, but it's more like New York style, and it is inside the Pine Street Market down there next to Kells. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's like a bunch of different restaurants in there. But Checkerboard is my favorite Portland pizza right now, I believe. It's so good. They're just their straight cheese slice. It sounds like it needs more, but they have other fancier things you can get. But like last time I was there, I got their cheese slice and I got whatever their special was. And I was like, oh, this special is going to be good. And I ate it and it was delicious. But both my friend Jess, who you met, he was there with me as well. And we were both like, man, we should have just got 2 cheese slices. These are incredible. Like, they just nailed the balance with it. It's so good. So if that place opens back up, we got to go check that out.
Absolutely, man. I know Tepe had talked about this, but the simpler pizza is always usually the best. He likes that, like that white pizza or whatever. But the simple ingredients, and the ingredients are good and it's done well. I mean, it's why it's lasted this long as a staple food in many diets, not just the American diet, but like it's just a simple, beautiful thing that everyone can enjoy.
It is, and I've yet to have a guest tell me they don't like it. I know someone's going to, and I'm just going to have to delete their entire episode. But
just cut them off.
Just like, well, I'm sorry, we can't publish this. This is unacceptable. It's not on brand.
Going through a tunnel. Click. Yeah.
Well, right on, man. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. That was a lot of fun.
Dude, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We'll have to do it again sometime. Hopefully in person after I get to play your guitar.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, everybody. For Dewey, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. And we went into even further detail over on Patreon as we normally do. So yes, if you like this show, if you like the content that I'm producing, you can go over to patreon.com/tonemob, where for $5 a month, you can get extra episodes right to your ears. And a lot of them are even better than the main episode. Oh, I said it. And I won't take it back. There are some real gems over on the Patreon feed, and it literally, quite literally, helps keep the lights on over here. It pays for my electric bill currently. And, well, right now we're just a smidge over the electric bill. So, like, the electric bill and, like, a couple cups of coffee. So, I really, really appreciate that. It's so, I mean, I can't even tell you, through 2020, the support has only grown over there, and it means the world. And if you would like more content, that is the way to get it, because I am putting out as much as I possibly can right now, and that is the only place where there is bonus. So patreon.com/tonemob. And if you like the show and you want to help support in another way, like maybe you're going to buy a guitar, which, let's be honest, if you're listening to this show, there's a good chance you're going to be buying a guitar or guitar-related thing in the next few. And the way to support the show would be to buy it through tonemob.com/reverb or tonemob.com/sweetwater. If you're going to reverb.com, you're going to look for a sweet deal, go to tonemob.com/reverb, and a little bit of that purchase is going to come back and help support the show. And when I say support the show, I literally mean help me buy my groceries. Go to tonemob.com/sweetwater if you're going to buy from Sweetwater and you want that sweet, sweet, sweet customer service that they are known for. A little bit of that will come back and help support the show as well. So thank you to everyone that does that. I know we're all gear hounds, and sometimes it's easy to forget about that stuff, but tonemob.com/reverb and tonemob.com/sweetwater are the places. Okay, that is enough of me. I hope you have a good week. Please stay safe out there, folks, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Later. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.